My first two questions was, does the self-leveling technology work, and is it tough enough to withstand the abuses of an EUC? Long story short is that it works amazingly, and as for the other point, well, you'll see. Coming up in this video. Alright, how was that light?
It was perfect, man. No blending, nothing. Beautiful.
As soon as I saw the potential for this light, I reached out to the creator, Kubo at Rudy Tech, and thankfully to him, he agreed to send me this unit for review purposes. However, as usual, all editorial decisions remain mine. So what's the premise of this light? Well, stock lights are flooding and they don't follow the terrain, so on hills they struggle. The IQLight tracks the terrain and is always pointing where you need it, and has a cutoff beam. So first things first, what's the problem with this stock headlight? Well, it's just full flood beam, always high beam, and no cutoff, which means it's blinding for everyone, and that's quite dangerous because other road users can't see. I've noticed myself on cycle paths, I can't see anything when there's a bike coming my way, and so you have to manually adjust it depending on if you're on a hill or decline. And what I end up doing is just having to point it down constantly all the time, and that means that I'm not getting a very good illumination. So those are the biggest problems. And now I did try the 3D printed cover for it, and I didn't really like it. It cut off too much of the light and it's still fairly blinding, so not really solved. I'm going to compare the stock light and the IQLight and just look at the differences between the quality of where the light's landing and also the awesome cutoff beam, and especially the self-leveling technology. So here's a good visual of how blinding the stock light is versus the awesome cutoff beam of the IQLight. Comparison of the low and high beam here for the IQLight versus the stock Lynx. And now with the Lynx, I'm manually lifting it up and down to change the angle here. Now this is quite undulating terrain, and you can see the IQLight keeps up pretty well with this terrain. And then the biggest area it shines is over longer crests and hills. It matches the terrain on the ascent, and then over the crest it dips down and it lights the way, plus prevents blinding for oncoming vehicles and pedestrians. And it's just no comparison to the stock light, blows it out of the water. The self-leveling is just pretty amazing. Hopefully you could get a good comparison there. And now I made sure to ride directly at cars in a dark road to see if they would have any problems. With the stock light, I've had them flash at me and I know it's blinding them. But with the IQLight, it was perfect. I've highlighted the features of the IQLight, and you can see just how many it has over the stock light, but that comes at a cost. It is quite a bit larger than the stock light, and you can see some differences around the outsides. This being the external speaker on the stock light, and we also have an exposed fan on the IQLight, and I couldn't hear it at all when I was using it, and this means that it's going to be 2 times as heavy. Here's the light sensor for the automatic on-off light. There's a USB-C port for firmware updates, and that's under this printed TPU plug. I also asked the creator these extra questions if you're interested. So when it comes to the package, there are 5 different models for all the modern suspension Leaperkim wheels. And the package includes, a few stickers, keyring, 2 remotes, and they have batteries in them. And then the light itself, and of course the screws. So when it comes to installation, you need an Allen key, 4 and 5 millimeter, unscrew the old light and it just unplugs, plug in the new IQLight, and then tighten it up. And Loctite is optional. It works on stock handles as well as most aftermarket handles. However, you might have to remove the lower part of the aftermarket handle. So one issue I had is that I really want to have a horn mounted here when I'm riding. I really like this position, but this light is larger, so it won't fit with the stock handle. So I've redesigned the handle to be taller to fit both in, and it also extends the pad area and curves nicely to avoid hitting the knees. So this is going to be a free 3D print file for you guys using the code for this video, or if you want the physical copy, just hit me up. When it comes to using the light itself, you just turn the wheel on and then press the power button for the light on the wheel, and then you have to turn on the light itself. Now mine's not currently working, I'll get into that later, but you press it once to turn it on, again for high beam, and then you can angle adjust with the rotation. Now the manual goes into all the different operations, so I'll link some of the specs there for you to have a look if you'd like. So the actual color of the light itself is quite cool, closer to the daylight than the stock light. And then I also noticed that you can set the leveling position with the dial, which I really liked, but when you're riding and your hand is bumping, you can accidentally change the settings, so it's quite sensitive. Might be better off using the remote there. I did notice that the beam is fairly narrow in, and it does have the really sharp cutoff, so it's a little bit jarring. With the stock light, it does flood out a bit better. And then the initial light patch in front of the wheel, the throw, is a bit dark, so that could be improved a little bit, I guess. And then the high beam was really good. It threw so far out, even better than the stock light, but you would have seen that in the comparison side by side. The cutoff beam is excellent, and then when turning, the light kind of tilts as well, and that becomes a really narrow beam, so I didn't particularly like that. It's quite narrow. And then when I was braking, I did notice the light did pull down just in time. It could have been a tad faster in some situations, but generally got the job done. And then when the angle is actually adjusting, it felt a bit like it didn't have enough fine movements. So it kind of has clicking positions, probably a servo motor in there. And then you can use the remote control with it. So you can turn the light on high beam and do the angle adjustment with that, but I couldn't get it to work to turn the light on and off itself, so maybe a slight improvement there. I did tear down the remote and saw that it has a rubber gasket in there for some waterproofing. Poured some water over it as well, and it's kept working nicely. So it does have the battery in there if you need to replace it. When we come to footpath riding, this was really a big relief because you just know that the light is down and not blinding people because you can see exactly where the cutoff is. I just found it so much more relaxing. I didn't have to think about being an arsehole that much. I quite enjoyed that. All right, how was that light?
It was perfect, man. No blending, nothing. Beautiful.
Great. So it's good to have a second opinion because I can't see exactly when I'm riding the wheel what it looks like. The ring light's cool and you can adjust the color, but for a daylight riding light, it's just not bright enough. So I was riding with the low beam on, and they recommend to not have the self-leveling on during the day, just so those motor components aren't getting worn out unnecessarily, because you don't need the self-leveling during daytime riding. The big changes from V1 to V2 is that the whole light no longer moves, it's just the light component, and this really reduces the strain on those components, making it a lot tougher, so that's a big improvement there. I've got a testimonial here from a V1 user, and he says that he loves the light, but it could use better waterproofing. Oh yeah, and the beeper is way too quiet. And it says everything else is fantastic, great main light, love having low high beam, great tracking, game changer, no longer having to adjust it by hand. Now when we get to Toughness, I wanted to really beat this one up, so I took it to the jump track off-road, took some big stairs, a couple jumps, and I cased the shit out of them, so it took a few big knocks. Yeah, it's working fine. And then I did read the website and the instructions, and it says it can sustain light rain, but no pressure water directly. So I used the watering can. Gave it a pretty good drenching, and now this happened. All right, this morning I poured water over this IQLight, and in the Arvo now it isn't working. It was working beautifully earlier, but let's see what happens when I turn on the wheel. So it does make a sound, but then that's the end of it. The speaker's gone. And interestingly, when I hit the light button, it dims the backlight. So that shouldn't be happening. So if I turn it on, there's a tiny sound like the speaker's trying. See, the angle adjuster's not working. If I press the button, nothing happens. In case it was because of the water, I tried to dry it out in my filament dryer for a couple hours, and then I put it in a bag of desiccant overnight, but it didn't change anything. I plugged it back in and it was interfering with the wheel very strangely. I couldn't turn the EUC off, and then the light fell out because I just had it sitting there, and then I was able to turn the EUC off. Plugged in the stock light again and all the functions were normal once again. So after speaking to Rudy Tech, they're sending me a replacement, so keep an eye in the pinned comments for how the updated light is handling and whether it's working well for me. So what sort of improvements can we make? And now the big one for me was the speaker. I think it's buried inside there somewhere, so far too quiet. I could barely hear it when I was hitting low battery beeps, and if you're ripping high speed, then you probably just won't even hear it. So that's a bit dangerous, and you might just have to use EUC World alerts. So that's a bit of a downside. You know, with the stock light, the speaker's on the outside, so it suffers a bit of waterproofing, but you can hear it really well. As mentioned, I would like a bit more light immediately in front of the wheel, a bit of a dark spot there. Somewhat of a wider throw would be nice. And then I would like the low beam to be on by default when you power on the light. If possible, this is a big ask, but when you're cornering, if it could self-level in corners so you didn't get that narrow beam, it's completely another design task, but that would be the optimal solution for that one. And a strange issue is that it's often got sold out, so it's a bit hard to get the hold of one. And then that rolls into, if you need to make a warranty claim, the back order is quite long. I've been waiting this long for my replacement, so you got to be patient. Now the best practice is still to use a helmet light with a cutoff beam, and I've been using the Raven CR1000. That's my favorite. All right, so wrapping it up, is the cost worth it? Well, this is cutting edge technology, and it does do what it says really well with the self-leveling and the cutoff beam. I really love it, but it does have some issues being so new, and while it is covered by warranty, as mentioned, the turnarounds can be a bit sluggish. So what do you guys think? Is it new innovation technology? I'm loving it. Hopefully this becomes standard on all wheels that are meant for, serious use. All right, cheers everyone, ride safe, and I'll catch you next time.